What is up, folk? Welcome to the first episode of a new series here. You're with Budget Monk once again, and this is going to be a series where we're going to be absolutely killing it with Austria, hoping to inspire those of you to play this through yourself and actually have a really good game like myself. So we're going to get straight into things here. I'm aiming for about 10 to 15 minutes per episode, but I know they're not going to be perfectly consistent. So I recommend straight off the bat, guys, here in the first episode where we're going to be focusing on the Union over Bohemia, there's a lot of other things to do as well. You can see here that I'm allying the Pope and Hungary. The reason is because I intend to destroy them both, and I'm worried about their diplomacy. By utilizing this tactic, I find that allying the Pope or Hungary, it actually reduces the likelihood that they will ally someone such as France, who is my rival, and then we go ahead and we break our alliances with them, which actually creates weaker diplomacy for them in the long run. Now, with that being said, you're also, in my opinion, you're going to want to ally Castile. And I should say that if you're looking for a good game versus a bad game starting out, I will say that if Castile actually if they are not rivaling France, that is kind of going to constitute a reset, in my opinion. And the reason is because in order to have the nice event of putting a Habsburg on the Castilian throne, both of you need to actually be rivaling France. That is part of the requirement. Now, the Castilians do usually disinherit their 000 ruler near the beginning of the game, once they actually gain some prestige. Look out for the same mission that I have acquired here, which is improve relations with Salzburg and or gain a royal marriage with Hungary. This will actually give you a Diplo reputation as a reward, which is absolutely invaluable. As the Emperor, you need that Diplo reputation. Now, I want to talk really quickly about the fact that my army maintenance is down and my forts are not maintained. This is how I recommend you begin the game. However, as the game goes on, I recommend that you do maintain your forts after your first war in order to try and acquire as much army tradition as possible. As far as my rivals are concerned, the two priorities are going to be Venice and France. I don't do any embargoing or anything like that because having only two rivals is going to diminish your power projection very quickly. Now, what I do here is I obviously have royal marriage to Bohemia, and I'm waiting for a Habsburg to be placed on his throne. If anything really goes wrong in terms of RNG, don't worry, because of course you can simply restart, but take note here that the Ottomans are involved in a war with Venice, and that is through his guarantee over Albania. So that is definitely a good thing, because Venice is going to struggle to accumulate a defensive alliance whilst he is involved in that war, and I am fabricating on him. We do not nearly have enough diplomats here in the beginning of the game, so definitely make sure to keep them busy. And that includes fabricating on Venice. I want to talk here about advisors, guys. In my opinion, definitely the best combination of advisors is Master of the Mint, Trader, and a Discipline, I think, Commander, I believe. These are by far the best combination, in my opinion. And you can see here that Bohemia has got a Habsburg on his throne. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to claim his throne, and then I'm actually going to make him my rival. And this is why I haven't done any embargoing or anything like that until this point. At this point, I will be trying to keep my power projection up. The reason I did this, guys, made him a rival, is because you'll find that his relations are absolutely horrendous with us now, and he will cancel the royal marriage. With that in mind, you can declare war on him without losing one stability. Now, of course, if you cancel the royal marriage, you will lose the claim, so be aware of that. Let's talk briefly about Bohemian diplomacy. Lucky for us, guys, the Bohemians tend not to ally Poland, although it is possible. In the past, they were very likely to actually ally Poland. And considering the nerf here, where you do not begin with many troops and even worse, much manpower as Austria, you would not really stand a chance against a Bohemian and Polish-Lithuanian defensive alliance. So thankfully, they don't ally them too frequently, from what I have noticed. And that's certainly a good thing. Their diplomacy is usually actually fairly weak. In my case, they only had Lüneburg there, you can see up in the north, which is pretty lucky, I must admit. But very often they will have one province minor like that, like Lüneburg or Magdeburg or something like that. And I've noticed they have a tendency to ally Ferrara very often down in northern Italy. So in my opinion, there are basically two tactics on how to actually engage in this war. I just want to say, first of all, that with your beginning manpower pool and your beginning money, I actually recommend hiring cavalry, making sure you have a decent amount of cavalry. I think cavalry is one of those things, especially here in the beginning of the game, that can be a little bit underrated. Make sure your cavalry ratio, even as a Western nation, is high. It's going to help you do a lot more damage in the shock phase. And combined with a discipline advisor, as well as the Austrian morale that they begin with, you're going to find that even though you may not have too many troops anymore, they're still absolutely beastly here in the beginning of the game. I do recommend also using that pool, that the initial starting money that you have, to roll for discipline advisors. So notice here how I separate pieced Lüneburg. Unfortunately, he's actually progressing quite well on my capital, but of course Lüneburg is a fort level 1 and my capital is a fort level 3. So keep that in mind. That is one of essentially the tactics to dealing with Bohemia, in my opinion, is actually by separate piecing his allies. Definitely take into consideration what military leaders, generals, the enemies have when they're standing on your forts. Hopefully, for example, they do not have a siege pip, and hopefully you can roll a general via the estate, the nobility, that does have a siege pip. Definitely take that into consideration when you're kind of base racing him, because, for example, if you have a siege pip and you're trying to separate piece of Lüneburg, while he's sitting on Vienna, while you're going to have pretty good odds taking that fort level 1 before he takes your capital. That's all that I'm saying. Now, definitely consider the fact that your two forts on the mountains, you will notice very often that the AI does have a tendency to kind of ball up their troops on those forts. And those forts, with already having the military advantages that I talked about, like the Austrian morale, they are just the ideal situation to fight the enemy, especially if you're outnumbered. Now, very often what you will find, guys, is that the enemy troops, they know this. The AI, lately I've noticed a kind of a pattern where the AI will actually stand on a fort like that, trying to kind of base race you and trade forts, but they will actually retreat as you group up your troops and move to them. Definitely take advantage of this if you are sitting on enemy forts. Leave one unit there to maintain the progress, accumulate everything, and go in defense of Tyrol or another one of these mountain fortified provinces, and you will very often notice that the enemy will just walk off and abandon it, and then you simply, instead of hunting them down, you just walk back onto the forts and continue progressing in Prague, for instance. Catching my breath there for a moment. So this is going really well. The other tactic that I find, guys, instead of separate piecing his enemies, or his allies rather, your enemies, is to simply rush down his forts. In a kind of, do you see how I'm sitting 1, 2, 3, my 3 stacks, 1, 2, 3? That is the stance that you're going to actually want, is sit on his capital and the neighboring fort, while having another stack ready to reinforce each province. Now, do keep in mind that you make sure that both, if you're using this tactic, both of your armies entered the forts from the same direction. So, for example, one army did not enter the fort from the north, and one army did not enter the fort from the south, because you want to be able to actually, same tactic, if he comes to defend his land, leave one unit there and reinforce the other fort. But if you did go from the north and the south, you're going to have to end up walking all the way around, and you're not going to be able to reinforce in time. Now, utilizing this tactic and the same scare tactics to get him off your land, you might find that you can separate piece him, or just rush down the war goals. One last thing I want to talk about, that province far out to the west, guys. It can be a little bit of a liability in the sense that you fully occupied his land, you defeat him in combat, and he retreats all the way out there, and you're unable to catch him and stack wipe him. It is worth sending a mercenary out there quickly hiring one up and going and resieging that back so he doesn't have the opportunity to actually retreat out there. But that's it for this first episode, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this, and there's much more to come where I'm going to be hitting up different subjects here as we go, and hopefully you guys can play along with me, and hope you enjoy this new content.